like everybody else, Gary Breen was watching on his TV from afar. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. You?
Very well. That was so bad.
Ah, it's so frustrating. It really was. And you kind of look at often in football, certainly league football, you kind of assess where you are after 10 games, and it gives you a true reflection of where you kind of are. And yet, that was Heimir's 10th game, and it felt like regression from the game against Senegal in terms of how good we were, how we played, the shape. And he talks about and he references so much about the basics before details. And I thought, okay, you got the basics really well against Senegal. Now shows the details. And it just wasn't there. We've seen a team sitting in their 4-4-2 shape, so passive in that first half. I'm looking at it and thinking, come on, lads, what are the triggers? Where are the moments when you know you can jump out of that shape and close down, influence the game? But it just looked like we were just set up like a boxer, gets himself in a good position, gets his guard up, but then just doesn't throw a punch. And it was so frustrating to watch that. It really was.
Yeah. So is that just we're all on holidays tomorrow kind of atmosphere?
Um, Listen, I understand that those summer fixtures are difficult, but time is of the essence. It really is in terms of how quick this World Cup qualifying campaign will be. We talk about coaches always wanting time on the training ground with players, and then which is going into this window. I was quite excited. I know it had an end of season feel, but I was looking forward to seeing where this team was developing, where its next stage was. And I could understand, and I genuinely believe the players and the managers talking about style of play that they felt and believed, genuinely believed, not hoped, believed that they could be successful and give a better account of themselves and challenge into those qualifying campaigns. But what we have seen there, and this is why I asked the question, why did he rest all the players that he did in the championship? I know they hadn't played for 5 weeks, but that's enough time, Joe, to have a 2 week break and then just build yourself back up again and be there. This team is nowhere near the finished article. It needs every player ready there to go to make sure that when we have that first game in September, we're ready to go. We're nowhere near it. And the reason why he did that, that's not Heimer's priority to give players rests. They can have rests. And what we're hoping for is that they're not resting next summer. And I just feel that I think we've got so much more work to do.
Yeah.
Having said all that, Joe, because of the shape they play, I still think we should be further down the line than we are. I still think that's enough time for this shape and the coaching part of it to be better than what we saw last night.
And do you mean on the ball or off the ball?
Both.
Both.
I couldn't believe it in terms of, first of all, let's just say about, getting into that 4-4-2 shape. And you could see it. You're watching the game. You're thinking, okay, you're in good shape. Now influence the game. A lot was made about getting Senegal as one of the opponents to kind of mirror what Portugal are good at in terms of playing in tight spaces, deep runs, playing in pockets. So that was a real positive in terms of that. But don't make out that Luxembourg are anywhere near that. You do expect the next level to come where we come out of shape, engage, make it difficult for them. This is a team that hasn't won. It's won one game in 18 months. They finished bottom of their Group C in the Nations League. And then we got Nathan Collins, our captain, afterwards saying, listen, let's not forget, these are a very good team. And you're thinking, oh, no, don't start that stuff again. We had all that before with Stephen Kenny. Please, we've had some real clarity, honesty from our manager. And that's probably the best part of Heimir in terms of what he's done. But we're still seeing consistencies. And to a certain extent, you can probably expect this from this group of players in terms of where they've been and where they need to get to. But we're actually now seeing inconsistencies from Heimir in terms of what he's doing. He told us that Smallbone, is not a deep line midfielder. He's an advanced midfielder. And yet in the 2 games, we're not seeing him play there. Seen him play deep midfield and then left wing. Now, we've seen him in those wide positions before against Greece, if you remember, in them qualifying campaigns, the struggles he had coming out of midfield to get out and engage. And I think we saw it again last night. And then the frustration is that Heimir talks about needing real physicality in midfield. So Phillips comes in and after half an hour, he changes it and puts him back on the left wing. And I'm thinking, what is happening here? And the biggest frustration for me, Joe, more than anything, was our build-up play last night. Because I think at times, and certainly in games against Senegal, I identified, but that by design and by coaching, I'd seen that the likes of O'Shea gets in good positions, can make that pass, that breaking lines pass to Robbie Brady at left back, who's in high advanced position. And now suddenly we're playing lovely balls in behind the opposition's defence. We can get numbers running. We've got numbers in and around the box. Last night, I've never seen us so poor in terms of building from the back to such an extent that the goalkeeper just went from front to back. And these are not these are not difficult balls to play. Even if you're a centre back or a goalkeeper, it's just a clip. It's just a clip forward that you kind of play that ball 2 or 3 yards short of your forward so that their centre back can't come over, they can't swamp him and win the ball. And yet every ball was a fight ball over their heads, around their neck. It was so frustrating. But the biggest one, Joe, sorry, I'll keep going on because this is the frustration I had, is that we still had that conflict of styles last night where what were we doing in that build-up play? O'Shea gets the ball, the left back, be it Brady or Manning, goes in advanced position, Knight drops out of midfield into left back, Smallbone rotates into the 10 area. It was such a mess. I was looking at it thinking, that looks like someone who's doing a coaching course on their A license, basic coaching where it's not quite working. They had a design in their head for it to work and it's not working. And Luxembourg are literally just standing there going, go on, keep doing it. You're not moving us around and you're getting nowhere. It was so frustrating. I just couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
Digest that, Joe.
I couldn't disagree with the word you say. I mean, again, just to restate the point you made, the championship players left off, and like it's not like we're the finished article and it's kind of like, well, listen, boys, you rest up because we're ready to go. Everything's kind of boxed away. These felt like 2 games which actually Ireland should have really tried to use better and didn't. Yeah. And so that's the frustration. Like they were just kind of written off. Like I found it even, and we'll get into what you said there about the shape and everything in a second, but I found it even hard to watch the game and get too perturbed by anything because I was like, this is so meaningless. Like none of these players, or so many of these players are not going to be there come September that this doesn't really matter. I just found myself watching the whole thing last night saying, none of this matters. This is just a waste of time. But it was the manager's decision to make it a waste of time.
Yeah, and he's really good in terms of how he assesses the game straight after a game when emotions are high. He more often than not gets it right. And he said it was boring. And he got it right again, and it was boring. And it wasn't just because there wasn't a lot of goalmouth actions and stuff like that. That wasn't it. It was just sitting in that 4-4-2 shape. And I'm thinking, that can be exciting where someone bursts out, puts a high press on, suddenly the rest of the team goes, puts the opposition under pressure. How many times did we see last night Parrott close down that centre half, and he felt a bit anxious, thinking, oh no. And he looks up and sees, it's only Parrott, I'll just pass it to my other centre half. And Parrott looks around to his frustration. The rest of the players are 20 yards behind him.
Parrott looked behind a few times as if to say, did we not agree that we were going to do this? Yeah. So he seemed to be like, why am I the only mug who's kind of pressing here? But again, I found it hard. It was obvious. 4-4-2, no one doing anything. It was like my Astro games after 10 minutes when everyone's wrecked because we're not fit anymore. It's like, lads, sit in. So I found myself thinking, are they just... It's flat. As you said, the championship players aren't there. A lot of starters aren't there. We're on holidays tomorrow. We're tired. Let's just sit in. That's what it screamed to me of, as opposed to this is how we're going to play in September.
No, listen, it's not just us who's doing it. You think about how poor England were against Andorra and then were against Senegal as well, by all accounts. I've not seen that game. But I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, these are so important. The triggers in terms of that shape is that the setup, that's a really good shape, but there has to be triggers and there has to be an understanding of when to press. And I just looked at it and thought, Smallbone doesn't know when to come out. And then when he does, he goes too late. They just pass around him comfortably. Now, this is not top class opposition either. And I just thought, like, this is really poor stuff in terms of watching it. And listen, I've been in those scenarios, Joe, and it's easy for me now, like, you know, I'm not playing now to kind of like be overly critical, but I'm thinking, they are difficult games, summer ones. But at the same time, there was lads there who are chomping at the bit to play. They'll play all summer if you're given an opportunity to put a green jersey on. No,
it's true. So, some of those players have no right to not want to press and get busy. Like, I mean, they're not starters. This is your chance to impress. So that's why it was slightly odd that some of the non-starters were playing like guys who thought, well, I'm a nailed-on starter. I don't really need to do much tonight. That was a little bit odd. Yeah,
and also you talk about resting players. Collins and O'Shea have played nearly every game this season. I know Collins has, and O'Shea will be close to it as well. And they didn't get rested. It just, I don't know, it's just the inconsistencies now of what I'm noticing. And of course, I'm listening to every word Heimir says because I kind of want to see where we are on this journey. And coming into this window, I genuinely believe that these players, as opposed to before when I felt it was cult-like in terms of they were just repeating what Stephen Kenny was saying. I was thinking, there's no evidence to suggest what you're saying, kind of tallies up. Yeah. I felt it was going into this, and certainly after the Senegal game, but That was a major disappointment. It really was. Bearing in mind, Joe, that our next game is the World Cup qualifier.
Yeah, it was strange for the dress rehearsal to not have so many players there who
Yeah.
could have been there. And you know, it's funny, you cannot listen to a politics show now without somebody saying the line about Donald Trump. Don't listen to what he says, watch what he actually does. It's like the great cliche in every political discussion. There's a bit of that with Heimir when it comes to what he says about wanting to identify his best 11, 14 players and play them together as much as possible because there are very few opportunities at international level to do that. Like when he came in and he said that, I thought brilliant because, you know, Ireland need continuity. That's how we're going to get really good. It's like Iceland, you know, to draw the obvious parallel. They had this, you know, settled team, built partnerships, knew what they were about, and just stuck to it. And I thought that sounds so good. But if we're doing the Donald Trump test, it's not really what Heimer's done here.
No, that's so frustrating. Don't get me wrong. There are instances of it. The centre-half pairing looks really comfortable behind that shape. And I don't think the front six are doing a very good at kind of knowing when to press, when to hold their position and do get moved about. But the two centre-backs look really confident in it. They look far more assured back there. And you're thinking about O'Brien coming in as well in terms of the incredible breakout season he had at Everton under David Moyes. Queven in goal, the confidence he'll have as well. So that's why I was looking at it thinking, we've got a great basis here. And even though I'm mentioning those two centre-backs, we've still got other centre-backs who can threaten and may well afford us the opportunity to maybe put one of those centre midfield centre-backs into centre midfield, because that's another contradiction. He keeps talking about physicality. We have no physicality in midfield. And then when we do put some in there, he changes it after 30 minutes and puts Smallbone back in there. And I'm thinking, you're not like, where are we going? It's just conflicting messages that we're hearing from the outside. So what are the lads thinking on the inside? I don't know. It was one game too far last night, it felt.
Yeah. That thing you mentioned about the shape on the ball, then you might expand on that for us, whereby Brady will push on in possession, which we're very au fait with now, and that's been something they've gone with, and Knight drops into that kind of area he's vacated, and Smallbone takes up a more central position. So your sense of that was, well, Luxembourg looked at it, it didn't overly confuse them, didn't move them around, and they were like, fine, it looks pretty and everything, but it's not hurting us. Has that kind
of... It doesn't even look pretty.
Maybe not.
It doesn't even look pretty.
Has that Brady pushing on, change of shape in possession, have you liked that before last night? Generally, has that been more effective?
I loved by design how they were doing it against Senegal, and I was thinking, Darragh, you're a really good passer. Crisp pass into Brady into advanced areas, and Robbie as well, sweet his left foot, get on the half turn, receive the ball on the half turn, and just play the ball in behind. Senegal, high advanced defence up the pitch. There was one phase of play in that game against Senegal where we made Senegal overcompensate on their left-hand side, so they had numbers over there. Quick ball through the centre-backs. O'Shea has a pass now out to Brady, which will essentially see now 5 Ireland players in and around the box with him in space to cross the ball. And that space was created from him because Manning drove into central area to make sure that the right back couldn't get out and engage Brady. And I'm thinking, this is brilliant. Yeah. And it was by design. I thought, this is so well coached. The pass never came. And I had 3 examples of that, Joe, in the first 20 minutes at home for Ireland. Now, if we're going to be successful, those opening 20 minutes at home are crucial in terms of putting the opposition on the back foot, getting the crowd involved, and playing to our strengths. So I'm looking at that scenario and thinking, okay, they'll look at that now. They'll review it. John O'Shea will look at it. No better man in terms of passing out from the back. And they'll say, right, this is what we didn't do against Senegal, so now we're going to do this against Luxembourg and put them under pressure. No, they now decide to do this ridiculous rotation, which ultimately, I'm looking at thinking, why do you want Knight in left-back position? Because as soon as that ball is lost and broken, he can't get back into midfield to compete and to stop them on the transition, which Heimir talks so much about. And then our left-back is caught ahead of play. And I'm thinking, Smallbone is then in the 10 position, and by design, they're doing it to get him in the 10 position. If you want him in the 10 position, play him at 10.
Yeah.
Don't do all this nonsense. Do you know what it looked like, Joe? It looked like those Hollywood films where the hero comes up against this bad guy and he does all these kind of movements in front of him. And then suddenly he stops and he says, right, ready? Let's fight. Yeah. Because you've not even done anything with all that kind of showcasing your skills and all that stuff. It was a nonsense.
And I presume, listen to you, I agree. So Knight dropping back into midfield. I'm sort of okay with that
Left
if
back.
he left back. Yeah, sorry, dropping from midfield. I'm sort of okay with that if he's like a combination of Pirlo or Busquets,
Yes.
but he's not.
Yes.
So my instinct there, listening to you, and do correct me if I'm wrong. Knight, there's no need for you to drop it. You stay up. Let's keep numbers up. And
Yeah.
one of that back three, once Brady is vacated, they should be good enough on the ball to play out and get us moving. No.
Yeah, that back three was brilliant, I felt, in
Yeah.
terms of how comfortable they came out
Like
against Senegal. They just didn't make the pass.
Yeah, they don't need Knight to come back and take a ball off them.
They don't. And then you hit the nail on the head. The best part of Knight's game is not on the ball. He gives the ball away too much as a central midfielder. So don't ask him to get on it. Let him do what he's good at and being tenacious, getting around the pitch. And let's try and keep play in front of him so he can charge on, knock down second balls, which he's very good at. And yet that was that incident when I'm looking at thinking, this is the conflicting styles that we've had. And maybe these players could be guilty of it because they've had three managers in a short space of time with Kenny, John O'Shea as interim manager, and now Heimir. But Heimir shouldn't be guilty of it because as soon as he sees it, he should be saying, no, stop that. What are you doing? Let's play the way Iceland got to major finals in a way this group of players can.
Yeah. And I presume that stands even if it's someone like Josh Cullen who might be better on the ball. We still don't want him coming back in there taking it off the centre
No,
backs.
because we've seen that in terms of like, and it's easy to kind of pick holes in it, but Cullen gets caught on a ball against France and they score.
Yeah.
That's that. So don't play those kind of balls into the central midfield if we're not particularly good on the edge of the box. You know, you're not giving the ball to Roy Keane or Matt Holland, Kinsella, Lee Carsley. This is not what they're particularly good at. Let's do what they are good at.
Yeah. And had Ireland been doing what you saw last night, that dropping back from midfield into left back, had they been doing that in the other games where they were trying?
No, not against Senegal. They weren't.
So it was just last night. It seemed they got into this weird. Okay.
Yeah, it made no sense.
All right. Yeah, again, I'm inclined to just say this whole game was just a weird. You know what I mean? If they do it against Hungary on September the 6th, then all hell, then we'll be angry. But last night, I almost just think last night was such a joke. I don't know what to read into it. You know. It's just that kind of strange game. What did you make of Troy Parrott and Ferguson, the partnership? And again,
no partnership. They didn't play. They didn't play as a partnership, did they? They were so isolated to get to one another, and it was so frustrating to see. I think Parrott's had a really productive season, really impressive. So he's obviously coming into these games full of confidence, and that's why even when we talk about playing two strikers in the first game, we didn't. And there's another contradiction from Heimir. Then he plays the two strikers last night, and Ferguson just, you know, he's so far off it. It's incredible. I'm looking at Evan now. I'm just thinking, just go away in the summer now, rest and recover. Because I think at times, because he's coming back from injury, he's always chasing it. And then he's then trying to get match fitness. He's always chasing that. I think he needs to have a clean slate where everyone starts at the beginning, even the players he's up against in terms of a pre-season, and we go from there. Now, young players, Joe, we all know you're going to have those inconsistencies, but we felt with Evan that he was above that. Such was his impact that he wouldn't have them, but he clearly has, and he just needs to go away, rest, let his body fully heal, but more than anything, let his frame of mind heal in terms of just chasing it all the time. He can go away, have a rest. Everyone comes back for pre-season and they start on the same starting blocks.
It feels like a really big summer for him.
Huge.
Yeah. Because I remember Stephen Ireland, the year he got Player of the Year at City, and he started like a house on fire. You know, Stephen Ireland was such a good player for a couple of years there. And he talked midway through that season, they were like, "What? You know, geez, you're having a great season." And he was like, "Yeah, I spent the whole summer training. I was doing boxing, I was doing rowing, I was doing everything, and I just was like, let me at it." I don't know if Ferguson needs like that kind of a summer, or he just needs to go and lie on a beach and think of nothing, as you said, heal the mind, or maybe a combination. But it's a big summer.
Yeah, it is a huge one. And it's important that his dad played football as well, so he'll have an understanding of what is required. And I'm sure he's got good network around him. But sometimes it is just a case of just stepping away from it, just coming back to it with a fresh mind. And I can't emphasize enough that what I'm saying there is that even when he goes to West Ham, he's not match fit. So when he does come in, he looks a yard off it. The players, Joe, I cannot tell you how important it is to have a good, solid pre-season where you're healthy. And then that's your base fitness. Once you have that, the rest of the season kind of take care of itself. If you miss that pre-season, you can try and replicate it in October and do the same fitness test that the lads would have done in the summer, but they're ahead of you. They're 10 games in now. They're ready to play. You're not at that level. And I just feel that that's something that's caught him out.
Yeah.
But it's important, like you said there, Joe. We're looking at him thinking he needs a reset, but he's had a couple of resets, hasn't he, now, in terms of moving to West Ham, and that will be the concern.
Yeah, yeah. Do you, because against obviously Senegal, it was Ida who led the line, striker on his own, and then obviously against lesser opposition, he went with the two. And Hallgrimsson did sort of acknowledge that the cadence of this double header was similar to what we're going to have in September, i.e. the tougher opposition first and then the minnows away from home. So I was wondering if he'll have, will he think about an Ida type who'll run the channel solo against Hungary, and then that partnership against lesser opposition he might go with. I presume there's no reason Parrott and Ferguson can't develop a pretty good partnership.
Yeah, but no, there is no reason in terms of their quality, and Ida as well. It's three centre forwards going into two positions,
but like they don't take up the same spots on the pitch, kind of thing.
They just don't dovetail together, and I don't know whether or not I wouldn't fully lay the blame at their feet. I'm looking at it thinking that our getting in shape is really good. The distances look great, blah, blah, blah. Back four, comfortable with a goalkeeper. But I have felt, even against Senegal, and I have felt throughout Heimir, I think, come on, what's the next level now in terms of linking the team, in terms of midfield? Where's your passes? Where's your centre forward? Dovetailing, working together. There was an example even on one of the games where the ball goes into Evan Ferguson. He plays a lovely little flick behind him. The other centre forward's not there. I think it was Ida in the first game. And you're thinking, these are the type of things you've got to work on. If you're going to play 4-4-2, then they have to be kind of in and around each other. They look so split, and it's not even as if we're playing split strikers. So our midfielders can get forward. That's not how we're playing. I'm looking at that, and Heimir said prior to the Luxembourg game was that he wasn't too preoccupied with the win. It was more about the development of the team. We saw no development last night. It was literally, like you say, it was just, there was nothing to take out of that other than lads getting their first appearance. Obviously, the goalkeeper playing, John Joe coming on as well, a couple of other lads. But I don't know. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, and also I'm looking at it and thinking, well, if you're thinking about Finn Aziz in terms of what he can give you at 10, or Smodic coming back as well. And I spoke to Matt Holland as well, who knows the Ipswich area inside out. He's saying that Ogbene is going to be fit for pre-season as well, which is a massive boost for us. So those type of guys come back into the equation now. So they will threaten whether or not you can play two centre forwards, because those second line of attackers will be the ones who will be saying, no, I've got to play.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing last night. We lacked any of those link players. There was just nothing knitting that team together. Like it's even hard to assess Parrott and Ferguson last night, because
the service was dreadful.
It was honestly like you couldn't overstate. It literally was as simple as we were in our two banks of 4-4-2 for a lot of it. Your point about the Brady pushing on at times as well, but like a lot of it was just ball booted up to them and best to look.
Yeah, I don't even think Noel Quinn could have dealt with the balls that they were putting. They were so high over the players' heads, and that would be a concern. If you're going to go from your goalkeeper to your centre forward and your team set up to compete for the second balls, then that first pass has got to be completed, and that just has to be dropping on their chest, in and around, a couple of yards short of them, so they come onto it. There's a little passes, release runners. If it's going over your head like that, you've got no chance.
Yeah, because against Bulgaria in March in both games, Troy Parrott can link play really well.
Yeah, they both, all three of them can. Yeah. Listen, they can always be better at it. Every player can be, but they're willing. They don't shy away from that physical confrontation. They all enjoy it. And if you think about the best moments of Ferguson, certainly playing in that Brighton team under De Zerbi, he was brilliant coming short, receiving straight balls from centre-backs where you're not, we were told never to play straight balls. You're giving your forward no chance, but he was brilliant at it. So, I don't know. As much as I'll be critical of the fact that they didn't work as a pair, the service into him was awful.
So to put a final thought on it all, could I put it to you? It was almost so bad and such a non-event. There's no point getting too worried about it. You can almost just write it off as just a weird, specific night. Or has it kind of punctured a little bit of your enthusiasm ahead of September? Has you a little bit more worried about September?
Oh yeah. Definitely. It's made me think we're further, we're not as far down the line as I would have hoped to. And you're right, Joe, to identify that these type of games do kind of rear their ugly heads at times, but that more often than not is in a 38, 42 game season. So you kind of suffer it. This can't be happening 10 games into his tenure with a World Cup qualifier that's so crucial in September. It has to be better than what we're doing. And this system we're playing has kind of been simplified to make our players more competitive. And I genuinely believe that they feel they can be within it. And I would argue that at times where we're saying about resting those players, you need to take advantage of every time on the training ground with them. But I do think that because this system is so basic, I think there has been enough time. And that was my biggest concern, is that I'm thinking you've had enough time to get the basics of this system in place, not just standing in shape in terms of the triggers, who releases you to jump out of that shape. And I don't think we're anywhere near it.
Right. Okay.
Oh, you don't like the sound of that, Joe, do you? I heard that big sigh.
Well, it's just... I'm losing track now of how many campaigns we've lost our first or second or both games and been out of it. And the thought of us being here after Hungary and then Armenia in September and saying, God, it's another 2 years until we've meaningful games again, is... I don't think I can take it. You know, I want the hype train to start on the 6th of September. How do you feel about that, by the way, given that in your day... They were long qualifications campaigns, you know, pot marked across like September and then March and summer. We have 6 games, 2 games a month, September, October, November, done.
Yes, massive. It's such a different remit, isn't it, in terms of it puts so much emphasis on who's available in those opening 3 months, you know, because over the course of a qualifying campaign, you know, players will come in and out of the team because it's over such a long period with injuries, form, whatever. But these players have to literally hit the ground running, and that's what's the concern. I do feel that this is, on a positive note, I do, and certainly going after the Senegal game, I was thinking, this is kind of moving along in the right direction, a bit slower than I would have hoped, bearing in mind the system that we're adopting.
Yeah.
But we are seeing emergence of so many players. But the worry for me, Joe, is that we're seeing a lot of a muchness. We need something to jump out and emerge, whoever that is, whether it's a couple of players who make the difference or it's the system that makes the difference. And if we can't have that real quality individually, that's why it puts so much stock and pressure on the collective and being so good in terms of what you do as a group. And that's why it was so deflating what I saw last night, is that it didn't look like we knew exactly what we were doing. I felt we should do, but I'm looking at it now and thinking that there's a lot of options in terms of players available, but there needs to be someone who jumps out and really grabs those starting 11 positions. It really does, and proves to be the difference from where we have been in recent campaigns to where we need to be in this next one.
Yeah. Did you watch much of Portugal over the Nations League at the weekend, by the way, last week?
I saw bits and pieces of it, but listen, one thing I will say about Portugal in terms of playing, how expansive and how brilliant they were, both them and Spain, is that they were allowing each other to play that way.
Yeah.
Now, we're not going to take them on that way, so we're going to make it more difficult for them, and that's why Heimir talks about so much about how good we are without the ball. And that was the concern last night, is that we shouldn't be without the ball that much against Luxembourg, because there'll be kind of challenges in our campaign where we have to be the ones who are kind of the most progressive team. So I didn't look at it and think, oh my God, like, I know they've got quality, we know that, but you can put up a way where you can frustrate those players, and I'm sure we will be able to do it. Look at what Senegal did to England last night. I know, and I there needs to be context. I know I don't want to sound like we have been in previous campaigns. That wasn't Senegal's best team that played against us, and it was it that played against England. So there is some context there, but nevertheless, confidence should be built in terms of. Our goalkeeper didn't have many saves to make, so you know there where you build from. I just felt that we'd have more layers on top of those foundations.
Okay, interesting. Tuchel, by the way, England lost 3-1 last night. He came out and said, "We need to stay calm." Anytime anyone says that,
yeah.
Roy Keane was on ITV. He said, "We're looking on the outside in, but there's something missing here. They don't look like a happy group. Are they all in it together? Is there a proper spirit there? I'm not so sure." Now, context being everything. Palmer's on the bench. Jude Bellingham's on the bench. It's an end-of-season friendly, you know, so big health warning. But Tuchel's sort of brought in as a short, sharp, electric kind of 18 months, let's go win the World Cup kind of a thing. So you want, a bit like you did at Chelsea, you were kind of hoping, if you're English, it'd be like we are on here. And he's finding that job is just, you know, endlessly complicated.
What he done at Chelsea, Joe, was unbelievable in terms of taking over from Frank. In terms of straight away, like I think they had something like 15 clean sheets in about 20 games. It was amazing, and then obviously it culminates in winning the Champions League. But yeah, he's up against it, and he's. We need calm heads and we need patience. You're not going to get that as the England manager, especially when you're German. I don't know. He's been brought in. You do expect more from the quality and the depth that England have. And you're looking at that scenario, and we're probably, and I certainly look at how we're setting up, the style we're playing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and thinking, we must have coaches within the Irish system who can deliver that. That's not being down on Heimir. I think, I think he looks a thoroughly decent man. Obviously, he has experience of getting teams overperforming to a championship. So that's, and we're fully behind him like we have been every other Iron manager. But he's not turning up with a CV like Trapattoni, where I'm thinking he's going to teach us something unbelievable here. Our coaches, without a shadow of doubt, can deliver what he's trying to deliver for our national team. The flip side of that then is that I'm looking at England and all their infrastructure and all their brilliant development and their St. George's Park and these unbelievable players they're developing and these so-called brilliant coaches they're developing. And yet they still went, no, we're not having none of that. We're getting Tuchel in. So you just don't know.
No. Come here, we didn't really talk about it on the show at all yet. Would you have sacked Ange Postecoglou?
Oh, listen, I understand it. You can make an argument for both decisions, but I wasn't surprised at all. And I felt at times where you can change you can change what has happened to suit the narrative. And I didn't believe that he sacked the league for the Europa League. I didn't believe that because I've seen the teams he was putting out. I don't think injuries were that impactful. I think other teams like Bournemouth, Brighton have had more injuries than them and still manages to cope. You can't lose 22 games at Tottenham. It's impossible. And it wasn't just this season. And you know what, Joe? That Tottenham statement was cutting. It nailed him straight away, as if to say, listen, these are the facts and this is why we've done it. We took away the emotion, but this is going back from after the first 10 games of that first season. The form's been awful. Now, having said that, when he's back four and his goalkeeper in place, and I'd said this in the build-up to the final, I kind of found that stat. I think a few people have jumped on it now. When they played, I think if they played together, their points return would have seen them second in the Premier League. Now, that's not to say they would have been, but that just shows you how important having your back line in place is. We saw it when Van Dijk done his cruciate. Liverpool virtually capitulated at the back. They weren't a threat at all. But I felt, looking at it now, that Ange will be forever considered a hero at Tottenham. I don't believe that he should have had the next 15 games of next season, because I'm not sure which Ange you were getting. Which one was it? If Liv is looking at that and they're making a decision going, what manager have we actually got here? Have we got one who's just so focused on playing Ange ball? Or have we actually got the guy who played like a low block, defensive minded to win it? Which manager have we actually got here? And that's what you had to weigh up.
Yeah. That was I was sort of all for he's earned it. The injuries were crippling. Some of the stats in terms of goals scored and goals against weren't actually a million miles off the season before. They were just coming out the wrong side of games. So I was willing to go along with the sense as well that winning the Europa League could have, we're human beings, not robots. So it could have just created something in the group and an impetus to kick on. But your point was the one where I was always like, oh, Ange, I don't know. You literally won the cup playing against, in a way that you completely disagree with. So that which is it, as you say, that was tricky. That was tricky.
So why didn't he adopt that kind of way in the season? Because if Tottenham had finished 10th, 15th, or maybe not 15th, but 10th, 12th, you'd have half suffered it and say, okay, but they can't be finishing 17th, where in other seasons that points tally is enough to get relegated.
Yeah. Okay, so it's summer. I guess we'll probably talk in a couple of months, unless you're going big on the Club World Cup. Are you all in on this? Is this floating your boat?
No. Oh, but listen, I'll take an interest in it in terms of that, but it's not something that. It's been a great season. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've had the absolute pleasure of doing all the Premier League games on a Saturday, and I felt that's been so exciting in terms of the various stories. I've loved the fact that, and in keeping with Ireland, I've loved the fact that Pep is now going away from its tiki-taka. He's going about more physicality. Can you get that ball in those forward positions in a way that Bournemouth play? And I'm thinking now that Ireland thinking, well, listen, You know, if Pep says it's okay, we can do it, as opposed to everyone saying, well, Pep says you've got to rotate the ball, so we're doing it. Rotating the ball for about 15 minutes on the edge of our box, going nowhere and losing games. So I've loved that, the way that football's always evolving. I've loved that. I'm looking at the signings that each team are making. I'm thinking, this is exciting. I've loved the fact, the Champions League and the European football was absolutely sensational. On commentary, I think I must have said wow about 15 times. And now if you're doing that when you're supposed to be professional, then you're watching something special. And I hope that we see that again next year.
Totally. And we touched on it last week, obviously. PSG performance was nuts. Like, and I know Inter fine, but if that is where football is going, I mean, that was one of the greatest performances I've seen. It was like jaw-droppingly good.
Oh, Joe, but do you know what, right? When I done the Liverpool against PSG, where Liverpool won in Paris, they were sensational. I saw something, I thought, oh my God, Vitinha is going on his 6-yard box, taking the ball off the keeper. Liverpool were brilliant at pressing, go after him, and he just drives through him. And the game was amazing, and it was incredible to see Liverpool have that resilience to then suddenly win. But how PSG evolved within that season was amazing. We covered the game at the Emirates, and they looked like a youth team. They looked so far off it as Arsenal just bullied them, and the most pragmatic, professional performance. They just literally just pushed them aside as if they were playing against apprentices. 5 months later, this new PSG turns up and comes into our sphere, and you're thinking, Luis Enrique, you are an absolute elite genius manager, how he evolved that team. And I watched that Vitinha and João Neves and Dembele and all those type of guys. I know you'll have the kind of starstruck ones of Doué and Barcola and those type of guys. But that midfield three, those three musketeers in there for Paris, they were sensational. And I cannot wait to see that team develop.
And isn't it, there's so much running in Vitinha. I mean, I don't know what he catches my eye more than the others, but like, even if you're trying to press this guy, he's like the next level of, well, I'm sprinting 15 yards that way, 25 yards that way. I'm like all these angles all the time. You press him, he's running beyond you. Like, it was outrageous.
What he looks like? It's so true what you said there. Do you know he's like, that little tenacious scrum half who seems to be everywhere?
Dupont. He's Dupont. Yes, he is.
He's at the bottom of the pack, then he's driving forward, then he's back, and you're thinking, like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether or not because he's on the ball more, it looks like, but his partner next to him, those two young Portuguese, well, that's a worry, isn't it? Them two up against us. And that's the worry that you have, is that Heimir keeps talking about physicality as if it's like 6'2", 6'3" central midfielders. It's not. Running. It's presence. Yeah. It's presence. That physicality is presence. And Mark Kinsella had it. Matt Holland, they're not 6'2" guys. Roy Keane. There's your perfect example. And N'Golo Kanté, them type of guys. They're not all 6'4" like Vieira. And that's what we have to find. And that's what we're up against. But exciting. Yeah. What a great season.
Yeah. Super interesting. Listen, thanks so much. We will talk to you when we talk to you. Gary Breen, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Enjoy your summer, mate. Good luck.